If a man looks me in the eye, gives me his word that something's going to happen, I take it unless he breaks it. He may have broken his word to somebody else, but to me, has he made that deal? Has he made it? We're nowhere near having made a deal. We agreed that we should try to get a bipartisan agreement.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. Those were President Joe Biden's first comments after meeting with Republican leaders yesterday for the very first time. He made them last night with our colleague Lawrence O'Donnell when Lawrence asked him whether he can trust Kevin McCarthy after McCarthy axed Liz Cheney from leadership for refusing to go along with the big lie that President Biden was elected through fraud. And here's the first thing Kevin McCarthy said to his supporters after meeting with the president. It's a text message that read, quote, "I just met with corrupt Joe Biden, and he's still planning to push his radical socialist agenda onto the American people." Now, it offers you the fullest picture of political depravity versus decency in the contrast between the leadership of the two parties. On the myriad of crises facing the country today, the contrast is even more jarring, with the addiction to conflict and manufactured outrage on the right. President Biden speaking earlier today on the gas shortages caused by a Russian hack on a U.S. pipeline.
Don't panic, number one. I know seeing lines at the pumps or gas stations with no gas can be extremely stressful, but this is a temporary situation. Do not get more gas than you need in the next few days. As I said, we expect the situation to begin to improve by the weekend and into early next week, and gasoline supply is coming back online.
And a senior White House aide underscores to us that the president's efforts to tackle this crisis included surging cyber assistance to the company that was hacked and waiving multiple regulations to surge gas to the region, including the Jones Act, which allows foreign ships to bring in gas, and waiving rules that allowed truckers to drive heavier loads. But watch this. Here's how right-wing propaganda spun the Russian attack on a U.S. pipeline.
What is this about? Well, you know. On some level, let's be honest about it, the White House approves of this disaster. Yes, some gas stations are closed tonight, but soon enough, the lunatics plan to close all of them. Close every gas station in the entire United States, shut it forever. This is a green revolution, so who cares about some old pipeline?
Now, we don't show you these things to raise your blood pressure. Right-wing disinformation, especially from him, has real-world consequences. These are pictures of Americans hoarding gasoline. Some Americans even put gasoline into plastic bags and then put the plastic bags with the gasoline in them in their cars. The lies on the safety of the COVID vaccine are ones we've spent a lot of time discussing on this program. As many doctors and experts, including Dr. Fauci, have told us, the vaccines are safe and they protect against death 100% of the time. President Biden's vaccination rollout has seen huge strides over the past months, reaching a point where the CDC announced today that fully vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks in most settings. But here's GOP Senator Ron Johnson on the vaccine.
What is the point? If of course, the science tells us that vaccines are 95% effective. So if you have a vaccine, quite honestly, what do you care if your neighbor has one or not? I mean, what is it to you? You've got a vaccine, and it's, science is telling you it's very, very effective. So why is this big push to make sure everybody gets a vaccine?
So again, the White House tells us that, quote, in just 4 months, we've got COVID deaths down 80%, cases down in 47 states, a higher percentage of the population vaccinated than any major country, economic growth at the fastest pace since Reagan, and the percent of schools open have doubled since January. One more topic. The big lie that is the single animating force behind being a Republican in good standing. Of that, the New York Times writes this, quote, former President Trump's months-long campaign to delegitimize the 2020 election didn't overturn the results, but his unfounded claims gutted his supporters' trust in the electoral system, laying the foundation for numerous Republican-led bills pushing for more restrictive voter rules. Those bills built on a lie, just like vaccine hesitancy in many instances based on lies, just like what we're seeing in the form of gas panic based on right-wing disinformation. The GOP is a party hobbled by and hostage to lies, while the president works to address the nation's crises, is where we start this hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman is here. Also joining us, MSNBC contributors Charlie Sykes, editor-at-large of The Bulwark, and Aaron Haynes, editor-at-large at The 19th. I want to start with you, Congressman, because you have made this sort of your post-government mission. And I wonder if the idea vault ran empty, or if sort of the fanaticism around partisanship just blocked out the sun. How did we get here?
That's a lot to unpack, Nicolle. When you look at having to win by using disinformation, or you look at the things that are being said, whether it's Ron Johnson talking about vaccines, whether it's Tucker Carlson, talking about the fact that somehow the government wanted gas stations to be shut down, I find it ludicrous. We can't even have a policy discussion because individuals want to go on these rants based on disinformation, but a particular type of grift where a lot of these individuals are making money off being using this type of hyperbolic language. For example, when you saw the leader goes and says, hey, he wants to do an infrastructure deal with the president, and then he tweets that out, that is just sort of the political way of doing business right now for fundraising, right? Or to get people mobilized behind you. And that's why I think some people find it so distasteful, because I can sit here, Nicolle, with Charlie and everybody on the panel, and we can have a discussion about climate change. We can have a discussion about the pipeline. We can have a policy discussion, what I agree or disagree with, say, on the Colonial Pipeline hack. Why did they pay off the guys? We can have this cyber discussion. But how do we do that? When we have people that are screaming into popcorn boxes, about the government wanting gas stations shut down, or why this push for vaccines when we know that vaccines work. And I'm sorry if I sound frustrated sometimes, Nicolle. It's just ridiculous that, we don't want conservatism to equal crazy, and it shouldn't. We should have two viable parties. But right now it's very difficult to have a discussion on any policy matter when you have this kind of crazy being spouted all the time.
Well, what's your breaking point? I mean, I don't think that it can come back. And I think I disagree with just one thing. We can't have a debate about climate change because it has to be rooted in a shared set of facts. And I looked really hard today to see if there was any place where we could have, where the country could have a debate between two policy arguments. I couldn't find any. The voter restrictions are not rooted in any fact. There is no fact of voter fraud. The fight against the vaccine safety is not rooted in any fact. These are some of the most tested vaccines that we've had. And the tests have taken place in the midst of a crisis while we're all watching. If they were hiding something, we would have found it by now. Where do you say no mas and stop being a registered Republican?
About there, we just put out we had an op-ed in the Washington Post this morning, and we actually published something about the Great American Renewal, right? What we have to do is, as people, as politicians, as people who have ethics and integrity, how do we change it? And here's my here's the debate for me inside being an intelligence officer. Can you fix it from the inside, or do you have to fix it from the outside? And I thought initially that if I just used blunt force facts, Nicolle, if I said, hey, we know election integrity is cover for Stop the Steal. I've seen it in polling, right? I know this. This isn't something that's, I make up out of thin air. I've been doing data and intelligence for 20 years. But when you think you can fix it from the inside, and I just see it getting worse and metastasizing, and people still trying to grift and make money off of this, I get very frustrated and discouraged. And I'm wondering at this point, am I even a Republican in Virginia? I don't know anymore. I think I have conservative values. But I also am a social libertarian. So it's very difficult for me to know where I fit. And I'm getting to the point of no mas, to be honest with you.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.